Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. And Eric, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us where you live and what you do for a living.
Sure. Great to meet you, Dan. I live in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I am the CEO of Carbone Fine Food, which is at this point, a sauce company, but we're an Italian platform brand.
Awesome. So how did you get into this business?
Oh, I don't know. Somewhere around 35 years ago, I bought a van and a truckload of water, and I decided that, water would sell in Florida. The rest is kind of history. So I had my own distribution company in Orlando, Florida. I sold that and then ended up working for Arizona Iced Tea, Hanson's, which is Monster, Fresh Samantha, Naked Juice, owned a couple of my own brands, ran Rayo's, ran Popcornopolis, and now here I'm running Carbone.
So, yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, like you were saying that you've worked for lots of brands and now you're at Carbone. So I guess like obviously every brand that you've worked with is very different, right? So how is your role at Carbone or just in general Carbone different from your previous organizations that you've worked at?
I think all brands are different, but I've always had the view that if it's a box or a jar or a bottle and it goes on a shelf, it's the same. Like the principles are really the same, and people tend to complicate this business. It's not a complicated business. At the end of the day, we put bottles on shelves. We put jars on shelves. Now, there's a lot that goes in between, there's a lot that goes on in between getting it on the shelf. It's a lot of work and it's very, very hard. But if you think about the mechanics of what happens, it's very simple. We're shipping stuff to supermarkets, or retailers, and it's ending up on shelves. So, margins may be different in categories, so you're going to have some differences, but the principles are basically the same.
For sure, but it's always one thing to get your product on the shelf, but actually getting it to move and to sell from those shelves is a whole different story. So how do you, make sure that your product is selling at a high rate on the shelf so that it's not currently?
You got to drive household penetration. So you got to drive trial. So that's various different techniques based on the brand itself. With Carbone, for example, we'll do some trial driving periods where we'll have a sizzle price for 1 week to get driver a lot of trial, because we know once someone tries it, they're going to come back. So at the end of the day, you got to think through all 4 Ps, in marketing, and you've got to make sure that you have all of them right with the brand. And then each brand is going to be different. Where you want to be placed on the shelf is going to be different with pasta sauce than it is pasta, because it's a different space. But you want to study your competition. You want to understand where your price point works best. You want to understand where your position works best. How many SKUs do you need on the shelf? There's a whole lot to think through. And at the end of the day, you have to have enough margin in your product to be able to make sure that everybody along the value chain gets paid.
For sure. But I guess what has been the most successful for you, right? Because you mentioned, for example, giving discounts or couponing, things like that. But do you also do in-store tastings? What has been out of those methods?
Sampling's important. In-store tastings, events, anywhere that I can get someone to try this product, right? Costco's a big trial driver because, it's the only place in America where you can demo 2,000 people in a day. And, if you think about the Costco shopper, they're not there going there every week. So they'll find your product in Costco, but they might buy it elsewhere. So it's it's a myriad of things that helps drive a brand, whether it be pushing out through social channels, whether it be price off, whether it be building displays. That display you see behind me right now, that's a great way to make your brand known. Like I can tell you, in that part of Queens, they know Carbone.
For sure. But obviously, I'm just curious, right? Because there's lots of different pasta sauces. So what makes Carbone special and the best sauce in your opinion?
Look, there's 683 sauces that scan in the market. And right now we're number 9 in food and MULO, and we're number 2 in natural nationally, and we're under 4 years old. We're under 3.5 years old, right? Why? I think we were built on a restaurant that had a following, right? And we've been able to leverage that following to bring it out into the marketplace and bring it to life. But we've kept the essence of the restaurant. There's a brand here. You're either a brand or you're a product. This is a brand. We went from product. When we first got on the shelf, we were a product, even though we had that restaurant backing. We had to get out and prove it. We had to bring to life what the restaurant's done to the best of our ability with social, with execution, with having the best product in the jar, with doing all of the things that we do to make sure Carbone's the best, with product expansion, smart product expansion. What category are we going into? Like, Alfredo's a big piece of the category. We didn't launch it right away, but we launched it now. And that's how you continue to expand and get more space and get more visibility, which, results in more household penetration.
For sure. So let's talk about your different channels, because I see obviously that you're running a promo. It's Prime Day, right? So you have Amazon, direct to consumer, retail, food service. So what's the breakdown in terms of percentage? Like which channels are the most profitable channels for you, or I guess most in terms of revenue?
I don't think we can break it down by channel. They're all important. So the online channel for me is not ever going to be a giant driver. I'd love it to be. It's very difficult with heavy pasta sauce to figure out economically how to make that work, right? You're shipping 4 jars. It's heavy and the cost is high. That said, it's a great awareness builder. It's a great trial driver, and it's a channel that's very, very important to us. And we do spend against that channel because my belief is that channel helps drive the rest of the channels. But I wouldn't want to say any channel is more important than the other. We are selling into conventional retailers. We're selling into natural. We're selling into mass, and we're selling online, and we're selling into club, and they're all equally important.
Right, but I guess like in terms of percentage, like of your current revenue, like what's the breakdown? It's not about like importance, but I guess like
I don't even look at that.
Okay.
I will never look at that. Anybody who looks at that's got too much time on their hands, right? Are the channels growing? Like I've just never segregated by channel to say here's what the growth rates are. I can tell you through spins. I'm growing at 116% in MULO. I'm growing at over 100% in natural. I'm growing at 80% in food, and I know where the gaps are and why I'm not at 100% there because of some distribution changes. So that I know, but I don't break it down as to what's more important. They're all equally important.
Makes sense. So
they're all equally important for a lot of reasons, right? Like, a natural channel may not ever be able to deliver the overall volume that conventional or a mass retailer can, but they are one of the best trial drivers there are out there, right? And it's how people find your brand, and it's a discovery. I believe it's even though it might be a smaller channel for me, it's my most important channel.
Hey y'all, it's Dan Melnick, the CEO of Zing, and I wanted to share a special offer for all of our listeners. Right now, if you need software development services, we'll give you 2 weeks of a free trial. Do you need to update your website? Do you want to build a mobile app? Do you want to update something that you've been working on for a long time? We've worked in a high-level technologies like AI, machine learning, blockchain. So shoot me a text, 817-874-2208. Thank you.
For sure. So in terms of retail distribution, are you in all 50 states? Are there kind of like, certain parts of the countries where you're more heavily located? What does that look like for you?
No, we're in about 24,000 doors right now between the United States and Canada. And it's, it's stronger in the Northeast where we started the business, but all of the regions are growing nicely. And it's something I look at. I look at regional breakdowns fairly often to make sure that we're tracking well in all regions of the country.
For sure. But there are certain regions that you're kind of focused on more in the next, 6-7 months to kind of expand, or you have some plans. Because obviously I'm here in Texas, so I'm curious in terms of, certain retailers where people here in Texas can find the product.
Well, in Texas, we're in H-E-B, we're in Whole Foods, we're in Brookshire, we're in United, we're in almost every account that you have in that great state of Texas. So, shouldn't be hard to find me in the state of Texas. Awesome. We have a restaurant in Dallas. I mean, look, if you think about, I don't necessarily have priority markets, but when I think about markets where we can leverage the restaurant, we've got New York, we've got Miami, we've got Dallas, and we've got Las Vegas, which Las Vegas does bleed over to LA. We've got the Las Vegas restaurant. We get a lot of people from LA. So those are areas where I'm hyper focused because I get the benefit of the restaurant. Right. So awareness is a little higher in those areas. So we're a little more focused in those areas earlier in our life cycle. That won't be forever, right? I just want to be very, very, very strong in those 4 areas, as we fill in the balance of the country.
For sure. And as you mentioned, right, this is like a newer company, about 4 years. You guys are growing really quickly and very nicely. So obviously with quick growth, there's always lots of challenges. So what is the biggest challenge that you currently face in your business?
I think I faced the challenge that everybody had. Supply chain got turned upside down a couple of years ago, and kind of, I think everybody's still weeding through that, right? But it's just part of business, and as things come across, you manage them and you work through it. But I think that's been the biggest issue. Keeping up with growth is always hard. So filling people in a timely enough manner is always difficult. So my staff does get overworked at times.
Right, right. But I mean, you've been in this industry for a while. So how do you find like the best people to work at your companies?
I'm a someone you know and trust guy for the most part. So I generally rely on people I know and trust. We have used recruiters in certain situations. Majority of the team's been recruited by me. I'd say out of our, call it 18 head count, 10 of them have worked with me either 2 or 3 times in the past.
Makes sense. You've kind of like built this network of folks that you trust, that you've worked with for many years. And then, when you move on to different organizations, that you typically will bring those folks along with you.
I try. It's a good thing when you can, because you all know each other, you know each other's weaknesses. Look, I know their weaknesses as well as they know mine. And
right.
compensate for each other, which is a good place to be.
For sure. So I'm always curious, right? Because in 2024, many organizations are using AI or finding the best use case for AI. So do you guys currently use AI? And if not, where could we give you some more value in 2024?
We're not using AI to any great degree. I mean, I'm sure some of the outsourced providers we have AI. They're using AI for certain things, whether it be deduction management or, things along those lines. But it's something that I don't even think we're using ChatGPT well enough, because I'm not. Like, lately been thinking about, okay, do we bring in someone just to teach that for a couple hours so my team knows how to use it? And I don't know if there's value or not, right? It's just, I see people using it for things, and I'm like, I see people using AI to review most important things in contracts. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a good tool, but to your point, right, there needs to be some human touch or human interaction. You can't have AI do all the work for you. So if we were to go back in time before you started at Carbone, what is the one biggest piece of advice that you wish you knew?
It's a really good question. I've been doing this so long. I don't even know if I have an answer to that question. Just I kind of knew what I was getting into when I did this. You know what? I wish I would have remembered how hard a startup was. How's that?
Right. Had you been a startup before?
I've done them before, but at the end of the day, heading into Carbone, in my head, I was thinking of it as an established brand because it was a restaurant.
Correct.
It was not a jar of sauce. So this was pure startup, right? And there's a lot of curveballs when you're going pure startup. It's just a lot to get in place. Again, I wish I would have remembered how difficult it was. I don't think it would have changed anything, though.
No, for sure. Yeah. It's like there's so many ups and downs and startups, and the downs can be super low, but the ups are so rewarding because you're essentially building this company from the ground up, and it's super exciting.
Yep, it's a lot of fun. I mean, to have cracked the top 10 within the first 3 years, it's pretty amazing. And I see line of sight to 6 in food. And, I think we can get there by year's end. And, I see line of sight to number 1 in natural. It's just going to take us some time. It might take 18 months,
Right.
But I see the line of sight to get there, and we're going to continue to just got to keep pushing.
Awesome. So I was asked this question, and you some sort of answered it, but if we're going to have this conversation again in 1 year from now, where do you see things going for Carbone? Obviously, being number 1 in natural and growing in these categories, but what else can you share in terms of your roadmap and vision for Carbone?
I think you'll just see, continued shelf expansion, more space, and us continue to grow in the ranks. We will be completely focused on sauce. You won't see us go into any other categories. If I triangulate backwards, I don't buy all the data that the big companies do, but I do buy some data. So I buy spins. So ballpark, we're doing, call it 60 million through the register. Rao's is doing 800 million through the register. Until I get much further along, we're a sauce company, right? Now, because Rao's has already proved that that a restaurant can be an Italian platform brand, there's other categories that we could go into, we can develop.
Right.
But the next kind of 18 months is maniacal focus on sauce. 7 SKUs
100%.
of red sauce on the shelf before the Alfredo goes on and before the pizza sauce goes on. That's the mantra. And, it's an eye level next to our number one competitor, next to Rayo's, and that's it. Like, that's what we're going to be doing for the next 18 months, just over and over and over again.
Awesome. And that's exciting. And we're rooting for you. So if somebody watching this wanted to reach out, do you mind sharing your website or social media? I guess best ways to get in contact.
My personal email, which is eskae, ESKAE at bricktowngrp.com. That's the best way to get in touch with me if someone wants to. And, I always respond quickly.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Eric, thank you so much for your time today.
No, thank you.